Hey guys, Dan here with today's quarantine video. It is this week's TV news and reviews program. We've got 6 shows for you. Some of them are like half shows. They're those 15-minute shows on Adult Swim. But, look, during isolation, a lot of things are not getting produced and stuff. So pickings might be slim here for a few weeks, but I am still trying to get to everything that I can. And as well, we've got Quibi, which is debuting on Monday. So I'll probably have a whole Quibi show for you about whether I feel like that's worth it or not. But first, let's talk about some news. So the cancellations and renewals are mainly on Netflix at this point because all the major networks are going to have their upfronts in May. Usually they do that, in a big gala to-do in LA and New York, but this year not so much with the pandemic, so they're all going to be virtually doing it. But that's when we're going to find out a lot about what shows are being renewed and canceled on the major networks. But for now, we've got a renewal on Netflix for Lock and Key, which is a show that I really enjoyed. In fact, all 3 of the shows that they've either renewed or canceled are coming from the IDW comic imprint. So they're all based on comic properties owned by IDW, and this is the only one of the 3 that's been renewed, Lock and Key, which is a show I really enjoyed. Carlton Cuse from Lost is one of the producers on that, and I gave the premiere episode somewhere in the B+ range, I think. And then the 2 they're canceling are the 2 that I didn't really think were all that great anyway. After one season, V-Wars and October Faction are both going to be done. And V-Wars went up right before Christmas, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas, and then October Faction debuted in January, but I guess they've gotten enough feedback and numbers to decide to cancel those. So those will not be coming back. Netflix really been dropping the hammer lately on the one-season shows. If something's not working, they're just going to be done with it, on to hopefully for them bigger and better things. So those are the renewals and cancellations. The big news this week on the TV front, maybe you've seen this already, is Christopher Meloni is going to be returning to the Law & Order universe in an as-yet untitled Dick Wolf spin-off of Law & Order, but it has been picked up directly to series by NBC. A lot of things now, since the pilot season has gotten shut down, I think we'll find that a few of these shows are going to just be going straight to air without even seeing a pilot. But in this case, I feel like they would have anyway, because it's Dick Wolf. He just signed a huge deal for NBC to keep him on, because not only SVU has been cranking it out every year for the last couple of decades, but he does the Chicago series on NBC, which do extremely well for the network as well. So Christopher Meloni returning to some sort of Law & Order show that will premiere hopefully in the fall, but it's going to be on in the 2021 season. So NBC now has that. That's the early drama, and then there's 3 new sitcoms that they've already picked up. The Kenan Thompson Show. There's one about Ted Danson as the LA mayor. I believe that one is from Tina Fey and Robert Carlock, the people that brought us 30 Rock and Kimmy Schmidt. And then, what's the third one? I forget what the third... Young Rock, which is sort of like Everybody Hates Chris, but for Dwayne Johnson. So he's going to be doing like the voiceover, and then there'll be a kid playing the younger version of Dwayne Johnson. So that will all be coming to NBC in the fall. Well, we hope. I mean, we don't know when things are going to be, back up and running. And then in terms of other cool things I saw for news, HBO is giving away the free. Now, of course, they're gearing up to HBO Max, which is going to premiere in June, which is their exclusive streaming service with a lot of the Warner Brothers content. But for now, because of the quarantine, they are releasing, or dropping the paywall, I should say, for HBO Now, which is, or HBO, what is it called? HBO Now, right? Yeah. If you have HBO already on your TV, you can get access to this app anyway. But if you don't, like, I've never paid for HBO in my life, so I can now have access to all of these shows. It's not everything, and it's certainly a lot less than what's going to be on HBO Max coming up in June. But there's about 20 Warner Brothers shows, or movies rather, that are going to be on there, both new and old. There's some classics on there, like Arthur is on there, but then also, newer ones like Detective Pikachu, and one of the Lego movies is going to be on there. So there's some interesting things, but also a lot of their shows. Not every HBO show. Game of Thrones is not included. Curb Your Enthusiasm is not included. But a lot of their, other than that, a lot of their really high-profile shows are going to be on there in full. Veep, The Sopranos, Barry, The Wire. I don't think Sex and the City was on the list. But 6 Feet Under was on there. So yeah, there's, not all of their top shows, but many, many of their most talked about shows are going to be on there for free for everybody. Silicon Valley, I can finally watch that show. And then some of their documentary series as well. The McMillions is on there, which recently ended. I graded that very favorably when I reviewed it. So definitely something to look into. I'm going to check that out. And Showtime, not to be a slouch, has offered a 30-day free trial for Showtime or their streaming platform as well. I guess if you get one, you get the other. But yeah, so Showtime usually will have like a free weekend here or there through your cable provider, but they've done the free 30-day thing as well. So you can check out a lot of new content on those platforms. We've also got some casting news here. Mayim Bialik and Swoosie Kurtz are already in a multi-camera sitcom to go to Fox in the fall. And again, this bypassed a pilot completely just because Mayim Bialik, after Big Bang Theory, has some Hollywood cachet, and so she's going to be in this new sitcom. I don't know what it's about, but new to that cast will be Leslie Jordan, who just came off of Fox's The Cool Kids, which ran for 1 year with him and David Alan Grier and Martin Mull and Vicki Lawrence. It was an okay show. I actually just finished the season for that last week, maybe. It was okay. Some episodes were a little hit or miss. Some I actually thought were really funny. So, I like Leslie Jordan. So we'll see what this comedy is coming to Fox in the fall. Will Smith is one of the top people here joining Quibi. We've gotten so much news about Quibi lately. Oh my gosh. So Will Smith now is the latest A-lister to sign on, and he's got a show called This Joka, Joka, This Joka, and it's going to be a stand-up series where he either is featuring somebody doing stand-up, or he's going to have like an interview with that person, or maybe both will be in the same. But Quibi only has 8 to 10 minute episodes, so they're all going to be, if it's both in the same, it'll have to be a pretty quick stand-up set, and then the 3 minutes of interview or whatever. But that will be premiering at some point with 16 episodes on Quibi. And I believe Quibi's going to do the whole week-by-week thing. Actually, they're going to have new content every day, but I think for their high-profile shows, they're going to be on once a week, is what my understanding is. I'm going to join up with the free 90-day Quibi sign-up. If you sign up for it before April 6th, you can get 90 days for free on Quibi, is the story there. So a couple other things. The Connors, yes. Well, we love the Connors here on my channel. All 4 of the main cast members have already negotiated deals going into season 3. There's been no official word on whether the show is going to be renewed, but there's no reason for it not to be. It is ABC's #1 comedy overall, #2 in 18 to 49, and the #1 comedy in that demo, Modern Family, is going off the air this year, so there's just no reason. If the stars want to keep doing it, there's no reason for ABC to kick these people off. They do 8 million or so in viewers on average, so for a network show these days, that is really, really strong. So hopefully that is good news. They have not standard contracts. Usually the contracts, especially for like a new show, are 6 years at a time, which is why a lot of times the big stars will leave after 6 years. Steve Carell left The Office, I think, after 7 maybe, or maybe it was 6. and who else? I'm trying to think. Fresh Off the Boat, there was a big hubbub when it got renewed for season 7, and the lead actress Constance Wu was pissing and moaning because it meant she couldn't do a project she was really passionate about. But they're locked in for those initial 6 years typically, unless they get fired. They can get fired, but they can't really quit, or else they're in breach of contract essentially. But The Conners is different because nobody really knew what the Roseanne show would be without Roseanne, so they're actually on year-to-year contracts, which is a little bit different for the industry. But hopefully they will all be back for season 3 then. Dave, the FXX show Dave. Now, I gave this one a pretty average grade after watching the first episode. I think it was like a C+. I didn't love it, but I do have to admit, it's one that I, in my mind, keep going back to, and I think I actually did kind of like it more than I originally thought. When I do this show, I usually watch the episodes all in one day, or maybe over 2 days, and then just kind of spit out my initial thoughts. And sometimes they're not correct, I find myself often going back and saying, oh, maybe this whole thing is better than just the pilot episode was, or whatever. But this is a show I keep thinking about, and I think I will continue watching it. But this is interesting to note because it is reflective of how the industry is going, especially with younger viewers. So Dave, when it airs live on FXX, hits about 200,000 people, right? Which, is not that many. On streaming platforms, though, after a 7-day period, it hits 22 times that number. So there are millions of people that are seeking this out either on Hulu or on the FX app, I guess. And this is a show that is obviously geared towards the younger crowd, 18 to probably really 34, probably not even 18 to 49. But, he's a young rapper that's, sort of popular in the industry. He doesn't have any, huge hits or anything, but, he's appeared on a couple people's tracks or whatever. But, I knew him from my ex that used to freaking, love his music, and okay, fine. So to get, for example, a real popular show might get 2 to 3 times the viewership on a streaming platform or on demand. That's, like This Is Us or The Good Doctor or 911, a lot of those big shows. To get 5 or 10 times that, okay, now we're more in like a CW kind of range, which is obviously very skewed towards younger people, but, a show like Riverdale can pick up, close to 10 times the amount that sees it when it airs as opposed to, afterwards. But to get 22 times the amount, and I think that speaks to, this show is very much geared towards the younger crowd, but also everybody's in the shutdown right now. So everybody's looking for things to watch. Oh, Hulu has these suggestions, and especially, I'm a Hulu subscriber. They have a ton of FX suggestions now because they just started the FX on Hulu, portion of their thing. So they're really pushing some of these new FX shows, and this is always one that's like at the top of the list. This one and Devs, which I reviewed the same week a few weeks ago. So people are finding it that way, I'm sure, as well. So yeah, I mean, it's a whole new world out there, and it's so interesting with all the coronavirus stuff going on to see how the television industry is shaping up because of it, because they're getting a lot better ratings. We talked about this last week. Overall, ratings are up pretty much all over for TV over the air, like linear TV they call it. But because of that, we're also seeing people, being introduced to shows that they never watched before, on Netflix and Hulu, but also on TV. So it's interesting. But then at the same time, a lot of the ad revenue is drying up because, people can't promote movies, and, nobody's really buying cars right now, and that kind of thing. So it's very interesting. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is this new podcast called Fake Doctors, Real Friends. It's with Zach Braff and Donald Faison. They're taking a page out of The Office book, where you have Meredith, or no, is it Meredith? It's Angela and maybe it's Angela and Pam. It's either Angela and Pam or Angela and Meredith. I think it's Pam. But they're like watching Office episodes and then commenting on them on their own podcast. So Zach Braff and Donald Faison have taken a page out of that book, and they're going to do a program dissecting Scrubs episodes. And they're also going to talk about the medical industry and how great the medical field is right now, especially with them having to be in the thick of the COVID-19 thing. So I think it's an interesting idea. I think Scrubs is a very overrated show. I liked it when it first came on, and then after a few seasons, I was like, all right, I'm kind of like over this. And then I've really never had the desire to go back and rewatch the episodes. And I'm not sure why that is, because I really, really liked it the first few years it was on. Maybe it just got too repetitive or what, I don't know. But I have no interest in going back. But I know people that love Scrubs, and when this news was announced, they were so excited about it. I think it's a cool idea, certainly. Even if I'm not going to watch the episodes with them, or I'm not going to listen to this podcast, but I think it's a cool idea for people in beloved shows to do this. I mean, I think it would be neat. There's a handful of shows I think that are really popular in the last, say, decade that kids didn't grow up on because they weren't like around. Like obviously Friends became huge again when it appeared on Netflix, and that was like a second life. The Office is another clear example of that. But there's a lot of things like that 70s show. There's a ton of people that love that 70s show that were way too young when it was originally on in the 90s, so they didn't grow up on it. But I think it would be cool for Topher Grace and Laura Prepon and some of those stars to maybe not Danny Masterson now with his allegations, but for some of the people, Wilmer Valderrama, to look back at some of those episodes. But there's a lot of shows like that is what I'm saying, and especially like right now that everybody's kind of stuck at home and thinking of things to do. Angela and whoever plays Pam, I'm having a brain fart here, but they were ahead of the curve by doing this with The Office like 6 months ago. But I think it's a really cool idea. I am not so into the Scrubs version of it, but I think if people want to do that with some beloved shows from the last 15, 20 years, I think that's a really, really cool idea. I would welcome that for sure. So let's move into the review section. There's some interesting shows that I've picked this week, I must say. There's only one that's on broadcast television, and that is NBC's Council of Dads. The rest are all either on streaming or on cable. And it's an odd mix of shows this week, so let's just dive right in. Council of Dads is the new NBC feel-good show. I think it wants to hit you in the emotions the way Parenthood did, and then the way This Is Us does. And they've tried this a couple of different times. There was the one, I think it was 2 years ago, called The Village, that lasted about 13 episodes. And this is actually based on a book, also called Council of Dads. And in this, basically, the dad, who in the pilot is played by one of my favorites from That Thing You Do, Tom Everett Scott, who, I guess this is a spoiler for the pilot at least, but I have to kind of talk about it to talk about the plot of the show. So he dies at the end of the first episode. He's got cancer, and it's told in voiceover by his eldest daughter, and she talks about how it was just him and her for a while because her real mom left, and then he married this other woman, and she had a kid, and then they had kids of their own, and blah blah blah, blended family, all of this. So we get all this backstory, and then by the end of the episode, he dies, and he puts some of his buddies in charge to kind of look over the family, along with, of course, the wife, and so he calls them his Council of Dads. This show tries way too hard to hit you with the drama, which I actually felt about This Is Us when I saw the commercials. I thought, well, this is trying a little bit much, to get that Parenthood vibe. Parenthood had just been canceled, so it was like, all right, we get it. They're trying to fill the void here. Um, but then I watched the first episode of This Is Us, and I was like crying, and oh my god, what is this show doing? Um, and then, The Village, I watched the first couple episodes of when that aired, and it was very clear they were trying to go for this same sort of, melodrama, real world type stuff, and it wasn't hitting quite as much for me, although some of the characters at least were interesting. Here, this is just such a weird pilot because you could have told this story for the whole season, um, and maybe he's preparing the Council of Dads, but I guess because they want to really just dive right in on the theme of the council, then we're supposed to just all be like, okay, cool. I don't really know these people or really care about them yet because we're introduced to so many people at once here that I just don't know what to do with it. Like I don't know what to do with all this information. We don't know whether to like these people. I mean, we assume they're all good people pretty much, and that it's not about, nobody's the antagonist. It's just life being life. Okay, I got that. But I don't necessarily care about these people yet. I don't know them, and they didn't do anything in this episode to make me like them, really. I mean, you root for them because the dad has cancer and now he's gone, and so now the Council of Dads. But it's like, number one, do you not trust your wife and your eldest daughter? I mean, the eldest daughter is an elder teenager. She's got to be, I'm not sure, probably about 18. I mean, actually, she might even be college age because she was hoping for a call from the New Yorker for some sort of internship. So she's probably college age. So let's say she's 20. And then the mom, so do we not trust them to take care of your family? You got to have 3 other men come in and help out. So that's sort of weird in itself, just in premise. But the acting here is okay, but they're really just tugging on those heartstrings right and left. And it was all okay, but it's nothing I want to continue watching. I don't want to revisit these people necessarily, especially because one of the more interesting characters was the dad, and now he's gone. So knowing that, I mean, he might show up in flashbacks or whatever. He's listed as recurring. So, I assume they'll probably have him in flashbacks and stuff, but not to the extent that Milo Ventimiglia is, I'm sure, in This Is Us. I mean, he's in just about every episode of that show in flashbacks. But that show is very flashback heavy, too, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, this is just, it's an attempt to capture some melodrama, but I think it's a good old swing and a miss for NBC. In the melodrama department, I leave Council of Dads with a C. So next, we go over to Amazon Prime for their very first reality show. Amazon Prime has been slowly building a nice television stable of shows, and obviously they have a lot of movies that get released into theaters, but that are like Amazon produced, so it goes right up on the Amazon Prime pretty quickly, like Honey Boy's a recent example of that. Late Night with Emma Thompson and Mindy Kaling, they did it there. But they have yet to venture into the reality platform until Making the Cut, which is the new Heidi Klum and Tim Gunn show. They departed Project Runway after 16 years. I didn't actually know they were on it that long. I knew that they had recently left. I actually sort of thought they left a while ago, though, because she started doing America's Got Talent, and I thought maybe they had some falling out. But doing my research for Making the Cut, I guess it's just that they went to a different network, so they had a falling out with Bravo, I guess it was, so then they went to Lifetime, or vice versa, or something. I watched one season of Project Runway, and I can't even tell you which season it was. It was a long time ago. It was probably season 5 or something. It was shortly after the show had really been gaining momentum, and word of mouth was spreading, and it was okay, but I sort of got out of the reality competition game in the mid-2000s, so I stopped watching Survivor around then. American Idol I was still watching for probably another 5 or 6 years after that, but but yeah, Project Runway. I'm not a fashionista. I wear a lot of band T-shirts. Smashing Pumpkins represent here. So it's more about the drama between the characters and stuff like that than it is for me the fashion part, because I don't really care that much. But that being said, I do like Heidi Klum and I like Tim Gunn. I didn't know who he was until Project Runway. I knew who she was just because she was a model. But I've really gotten to know her on America's Got Talent. She's not my favorite judge on there, especially because she doesn't really understand comedians, so she doesn't pick a lot of the ones I think are funny. And I think that's more of her language barrier than anything. But I like the two of them together, so I'm glad that the two of them are doing this instead of just like Heidi Klum went out on her own. They left Project Runway together, and so 2 years later here you have Making a Cut. So essentially it's a very similar show. You've got some very famous people doing the judging, including Naomi Campbell, and then some fashion people I'm not real familiar with, but the people on the show seem to know who they were. But again, Heidi's hosting, and they have to make different outfits out of the material and stuff, and Tim Gunn gives them some advice. Where it really differs from Project Runway is that that was all very New York based, and New York people and everything. This is more of a tour around the world. In this particular episode, the first one, they went to Paris, and they were part of Paris Fashion Week or whatever, and so they were doing designs that they felt would play in Paris. So it's a lot of that sort of thing in regards of what's different about it. But otherwise, it's more or less the same show, because Tim Gunn is still the same, and he's great. And she's a lot of fun, and she's pretty great. The other difference, I guess, I don't fully remember how the judging worked in Project Runway, but I think it was fairly standard, for the time. The mid-2000s, all the reality shows kind of did the same thing, if they had a judging panel. So they would come in, and the judges would basically say, okay, well, you lost this week, you're the worst, goodbye. And then everybody else would stay. Here, they pick a couple of people, 2 or 3 designers, to sort of call out and say, look, I don't know what your thought was here, but I didn't like this or whatever. And Nicole Richie is another one on the judging panel, and I really like her. I didn't when she was buddies with Paris Hilton doing all that kind of the simple life stuff. But in the last 5 years or so, I've really gotten to like her. I thought she was funny in that show Great News that Tina Fey produced. So yeah, she's one of the judges too. But basically, they say who they didn't like, and that person gets to kind of say, okay, well, here's kind of what my thought process was on this. Here's why I chose to do it this way. And then Heidi asks, okay, has anybody's mind been changed by this? And sometimes they have, sometimes they haven't. So I think that adds an interesting wrinkle to it as well. This is not something that I'll continue to watch. Again, I still don't care about fashion. But I do have to say, some of the things I thought were pretty good designs, the panel seemed to agree on. So I don't know. Maybe I know designs more than I think. But I thought this was actually a pretty fun show to watch. Even though I won't do it again. But if you're into the reality thing, if you liked Project Runway and miss them on it, because that show is still on. Just with different hosts and stuff. But I'll leave this one with a B. I mean, it's not really my style necessarily, but it's a lot of fun. So up next is a show on Netflix called 100 Humans, Life's Questions Answered. This is a limited run show. There's 8 episodes up. I don't know if it's going to continue as a series, or if it is sort of a one-and-done social experiment kind of thing. It's always hard to tell with Netflix unless they say it up front, which they did not do here. But basically, it's a social experiment show. They've got 100 people from all walks of life, all age groups, all races, male and females, pretty evenly mixed. And they tackle a different topic in each episode, and then they have different experiments within that topic. So, I watched 2 episodes for this because I always feel like a show like this, since every episode is going to be pretty different, you want to kind of get a better feel for it. So I watched the first 2. In the first one, they are talking about attractiveness and what makes a person attractive. And some of the experiments they did was, does being a good dancer make you more attractive? Or no, what was it? If you, does having a higher sperm count make you a better dancer and therefore make you more attractive? So they did that. They did a does being funny make you more attractive? They did an experiment where they had two people come in and do the exact same presentation, one boring way and one a funny way, and how did the people rate the attractiveness? So it's silly things like that. And then the second episode I watched was they took the people into different age groups: 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and then 60s and up, and it was all about like which age range are you the most successful, or something like that. Which age range, like, are you at your best, I guess, or are you at your happiest, or something like that. So they did different experiments with that. Like they had one of them do sort of an escape room type thing and see which ones were able to do it the fastest. They did one about memory where they gave you things on a grocery list and then they added one every turn to see who couldn't do it anymore. So it was interesting. The people in their 20s won, but the people in their 60s actually tied for second with the people in their 30s. So that was kind of interesting. So the three hosts of the show, I have mixed feelings on. My favorite is the black gal, Zainab Johnson. And the other two are okay. The guy I don't really like that much, Sammy Obid. I feel like he's just, I don't know, he's trying to be real funny, but he ends up, to me, I think, being, I don't know, a little boring, or he seems like he's sort of bored with the show kind of thing. So, I don't like that. Who's the other host? Oh, Ali Ward. Yeah, she's okay. I like her, the second best. I think the show is entertaining and interesting, but is it a good show? I'm not sure. Like, it definitely, there's no real science put into it. I'll say that. So, if you're watching this thinking like, oh man, these are some real, intense experiments they're doing. They're really not. First of all, 100 isn't even that big of a sample size for a real, scientific experiment. But I think it's interesting, and the experiments they're doing are entertaining, if nothing else. I wish the hosts were a little more likable. They have the guy interview sort of professionals in the biz. Like for the age one, they interviewed a psychologist to talk to him about what he experiences with, or what he knows also in his professional opinion of what age range are you your happiest or whatever. And they're asking okay questions of the people, but the guy thinks he's real funny and he's just kind of not. I found him rather annoying. But the gals I like more. The black girl I really like. I thought she was the most on point, and she's the most fun to watch too. She seems to be the most energetic of the three of them, and the most like into what they're doing. So I don't know. But as for a show, it's okay. It's entertaining, certainly. And I will watch the remaining 6 at some point to see what other things to do. But I wouldn't mind if this got renewed either. I think it's fun enough in that aspect. But I leave 100 Humans with a B as well. So up next we have two 15-minute shows on Adult Swim. Now, I don't generally watch Adult Swim. I think the shows on there are pretty stupid overall. So take these reviews with a grain of salt. But I have found some that I've liked over the years. I liked the one with Chris Elliott. Was that called like Excalibur or something? It was sort of like a parody of like Hercules type shows. And then I love that the one that John C. Reilly did, where he plays like the guy with the crazy hair in like the 80s, like the doctor. I forget his name. It's been years since that show was on, but they keep coming out with different things. Children's Hospital I thought was really good. I always think that's Comedy Central, but I'm pretty sure that was Adult Swim. So anyway, most of their shows are like 15-minute shows, and so here we have another one with Beef House. We have two more actually that I'm going to review. Beef House and Three Busy Debras. So Beef House is from Tim and Eric, who have had other things on Adult Swim. You know, Tim and Eric Awesome Show, and they did like a movie then about it. I don't generally find Tim and Eric to be funny, so I'll preface it right here with that. I think they try way too hard. I think they really want to be Trey and Matt from South Park, but are just not at all that creative or clever or funny. It comes so naturally, I feel like, to the South Park guys, and Tim and Eric, I think, are just a very pale imitation. So the basic premise of this show, Beef House, is it's a send-up of 80s and 90s, like, family-type sitcoms, like, Your Growing Pains is and Your Family Matters and that kind of thing. It's got a canned laugh track. Jamie Lynn Sigler plays the one's wife. Basically, she's married to Tim's character, who is named Tim, and then Eric plays Eric. She plays Megan. She actually changed her name, but Eric is an old friend of Tim, so he lives there too. And then there's these other three guys that live there called the Beef Boys, for whatever reason. So my main problem with this show, other than that it's not funny, is that when you're doing a parody of something, you also kind of have to be that thing. My best example is the Brady Bunch movie, because the Brady Bunch movie is a note-perfect parody of the Brady Bunch, but it's also a great movie because it's funny, and it is original because it brings the Brady Bunch world into the now. That's the twist on it. But it would also be a great episode of the Brady Bunch. Like a Weird Al song. Okay, so Weird Al, yeah, there's funny lyrics, but it's meaningless if you don't also want to listen to Weird Al's song over and over again because it's so funny and so great. And you get that here. Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping. One of the best comedies of the last 20 years for sure. I love it. Andy Samberg, he's so funny in it, and the whole Lonely Island crew is. But the songs in Pop Star are actually really good songs. They're good, hooky pop songs. And so you have to kind of also be the thing that you're parodying to be a success at it, in my opinion. And this doesn't work in that regard at all because it's not funny. And also, it's not realistic. You're parodying 80 shows, but then you're saying all these curse words and this, da 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 da. And it's like, all right, but a show in the 80s would never say that, And yeah, there were some risque jokes in the Brady Bunch movie, that wouldn't have been said on the Brady Bunch sitcom. But, we're also talking movie versus television, and it's not like they said the F-bomb, they were just sort of some risque jokes, which, 70s TV had risque jokes all the time, and that's how the Brady Bunch movie did it. They were never coming out and saying certain things. And here it's you wouldn't have an 80s sitcom that said, even ass probably, not in a family sitcom. And so that took me right out of it. So I didn't think that was really good parodying. And then it just wasn't funny. The plot of the first episode was, the drill sergeant from the past comes home and wants to be friends, but then he runs the place like a sergeant would or whatever in the army, and so he's yelling at everybody and da 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 da. It's it's okay for a premise, but even at 15 minutes, and really once you cut commercials out, it's 11 minutes. Even then, it's stretched a little thin. These are more one-note jokes that you would see in a sketch on Saturday Night Live that lasts 7 minutes or 8 minutes. But then you never have to go back to that sketch again until a month later when they decide to redo it. This is I don't see them sustaining this for any length of time. And if you like Tim and Eric, you'll probably think it's a hoot. If you like a lot of the stuff on Adult Swim, you'll probably think it's a hoot. So again, I'm probably, kind of biased because I don't think they're funny at all. But even still, I was willing to give this a chance and watch it. But it did not do it for me, and Beef House gets a D. So up next is Three Busy Debras. This is another 15-minute Adult Swim show. This one has, for me, a better pedigree behind it because it's produced by the good old Amy Poehler. And I find her to be real hit or miss lately, actually, with her stuff. But I did find this to be better than Beef House. It's Sandy Honig, Mitra Juhari, and Alyssa Stonehoya are the three different Debras. I don't know any of these people. Maybe they're from other things, but I didn't recognize them, which is I always kind of think is nice because A, it exposes you to new people, but B, sometimes you don't want to be like taken out of something because you're like, oh well, that person's Amy. There's Amy Poehler. But so this is sort of another parody type show. I mean, most of the shows on Adult Swim I feel like are parodies of some sort or another. This one parodies like nighttime soaps, Desperate Housewives kind of thing, Dynasty kind of thing. And there are three women named Deborah, and there's a murder in the episode, and they're trying to basically cover it up. The pool boy is murdered. One of the Deborah's pool boys is murdered, and so the three of them try to cover it up and get with the community, and it is definitely over the top, but they certainly did a better job than Beef House of actually being the thing that they're parodying. Like, you could see this storyline on Desperate Housewives, or Dynasty, and they would take it more seriously than this show was taking it. I wouldn't say I busted and got laughing, but certainly a better parody of what it's doing than Beef House I thought was. And the three leads are all really kind of, giving it the old college tribe, like being a bit over the top, and not really caring necessarily about the other characters, like they do that a lot on those shows. So I think this is definitely a sharper written parody than Beef House for sure. So I'm not sure. Again, I don't regularly watch Adult Swim ever. I mean, I shouldn't say regularly. I never watch Adult Swim pretty much. But this isn't one I think I'll go back to, but I think it's certainly a better made parody than Beef House. I thought it was all right. I leave Three Busy Debras with a C+. Three fairly quick reviews for quick shows, 15 minutes. So finally we close on a kids show. I try to watch all the kids shows to see what the 6-year-olds are watching these days. This one comes from Disney Junior, and I was intrigued by this because it's about an Indian girl named Mira, and she is a detective. It's called Mira, Royal Detective, and pretty much, except for Kumail Nanjiani and the dude that played Raj on Big Bang Theory, pretty much every Indian American actor you've heard of is in this. Well, Mindy's not either, but Frida Pinto, Cal Penn, Jamila Jamil, Hannah Simone from New Girl. Actually, the guy that played Mindy's brother on Mindy Project is on this too. So there's a lot of famous voices here. I love Cal Penn, by the way. I know I said that when I reviewed Sunnyside, but over the years, like, I thought Harold Kumar was like silly and whatever, like, okay, he's kind of a joke. But then he started doing all these dramatic roles like Designated Survivor and House, and I was like, all right, this guy's like very like cool. He's a good actor. And then he did all the political stuff like in real life with the Obama campaign. And Obama's White House, and I was like, okay, so now he's like also a really intelligent dude. I like Cal Penn a lot, so I'm glad that he loaned his voice here to one of the episodes, and he's shown up here as recurring. So, he's actually, I'm sorry, he is in every episode. He's not one of the recurrings. He is part of the comedy relief of this show. He's sort of the Timon and Pumbaa. Him and Utkarsh Ambudkar. That is the guy that plays Mindy's brother on Mindy Project. I apologize for butchering his name. But Mira herself is voiced by Leela Ladner, who I don't know, but she does a good job. But it's cute. Like most Disney Junior shows, it's 15-minute segments, but they're two in one episode, so it's a half hour is 2 episodes really. But so in this case, 2 different mysteries. And they're cute. The one kid lost their bike in the one episode, and the other one, she lost the bracelet she was going to give to the queen. It's cute. It's a cute show. Everybody, has really nice chemistry with each other in the voice acting. I like the little comic relief characters that those 2 guys provide. They definitely come off to me as like a Timon and Pumbaa kind of thing. I think that's sort of the gold standard, though. Like you can't be expected to be Timon and Pumbaa. Certainly, the 2019 Lion King wasn't the real Timon and Pumbaa. They tried, but it's hard to live up to that gold standard of that. But these guys are funny, and I think the mysteries are good for that age range. I mean, I don't think they're dumbing it down necessarily, but I think it's something that the kids can definitely play along with and maybe try and figure out along with Mira. So I like that aspect of it. I still don't love this 3D animation style that like all the Nickelodeon shows have now and the Disney Junior shows. It's not my favorite style. I'm warming to it a little bit, but to me it looks so very computerized. Like I'm a huge fan of the hand drawn animation, and the problem is like computer animation's fine when you have a big budget like a Pixar or DreamWorks or something. But these guys obviously are not working with huge budgets, so it looks. I don't know. It looks a little cheap to me, but whatever. I mean, a 6-year-old's not going to care. Not going to be discerned about it. But I don't know. But I thought this was a cute show. I think it's good for kids, and I think it's great that we have all of these different races and cultures and walks of life that are in kid shows now. When I was growing up, Sesame Street was really the only one that had diverse characters. You had Lewis and Maria, and they would teach us Spanish a little bit, and then everything else was mostly white people, except, LeVar Burton, of course, I'm reading Rainbow, but he was the only one in the cast. It wasn't like a mix of people. But I think it's great for kids to see all these different, cultures be represented, and specifically within their culture. I mean, there's a lot of sort of especially in the first mystery with the Queen, there was a lot of like Indian culture stuff that was sort of laid out for the kids to learn from. So I thought that was cool too. So I leave Mira, is it Royal Detective? Mira Royal Detective with a B+. I thought it was a pretty cute show. So that's going to do it for me. We'll have a Quibi show next week, I guess, when I watch some of that stuff. I don't know what the shows... I know I read the whole list. I don't know if all 50 of those shows are going up the first day or not, but if they do, I'm sure I won't be watching all 50 of them, but I'll probably, duck in for some samples, etc. And then I'll bring you another, TV news and reviews next week. There's a new show on Sci-Fi that I actually wanted to get to, but I think I might watch 2 episodes of that to get a better picture for it. And then there's also a 4-part miniseries on Netflix that just went up that I think I'm going to try and watch all 4 episodes of before I review that. But then there's some other shows as well. The new show on CBS Thursday nights called Broke just premiered, was it a week ago, or was it just last night? I think it was a week ago. Or, right? Or maybe it was on Monday. I don't know. First of all, my days are all a blur anymore, like I'm sure many of you. But anyway, there's always new stuff to watch here, especially with all these streaming services. So I will definitely be back with some more TV reviews for you next week. But join me every day for a different quarantine video here on the channel reviewing something or other, or talking about something or other. So thanks for watching, and be safe. We'll see you next time. Bye.